That's probably not good. Hello there, folks, and welcome to another episode of Crazy Thoughts, where the distance between you and I continues to grow, and we've been talking about getting a mediator. Where I talk about some video games that I have been playing as of recent, that I thought would fill up a couple of Google document pages. As the title implies, we will be discussing another round of sequels and some semi-recent games that I went through, or attempted at least. And I can't recall if I had teased something in the last episode that ended up not happening, but let's just say I have learned my lesson and I'm never going to do that again. I'm being serious this time, because we're all just going to end up disappointed regardless. So why tease it anything? Really. The EA stock is happening soon, I promise. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just not going to say anything about it until it actually happens, because all that does is create expectations, and, well, look where we've ended up. Hey, you get the tissues. There we go. Rest in peace, you... well, whatever you were. Now, unlike Concord, I actually did play a bit of this before it got shut down unceremoniously. So, sure, let's talk about it. So normally I play any multiplayer games with my friends over on my PC, because that's where this good mic is, and all of the other mics that I have...
complete fucking garbage.
Every single one of them. Complete garbaggio. And I didn't want to lug this over to my living room where the other consoles are and communicate through that. It's just too cumbersome. Unfortunately, Highguard on PC here had a bit of a complex anti-cheat system that required a secure boot and for me to activate TPM 2.0. Meaning I would have to mess with my BIOS on that computer to play this crappy game, and that's not something I'm very comfortable with doing. And many other people felt the same way. Yes, I know this has been active for many multiplayer games in the past year, but you can add that to the list of reasons that I don't play those games either. And when one of my buddies did go through all that effort, and they tried to boot the game, it wouldn't load. So, there you go. The only way that I would be willing to play the game is on my PS5, but oh look. It is here in the living room. Now you might be asking yourself, well, what about PS Remote Play? Neither of my PCs have ever worked well with Remote Play. It's always super laggy, and then it would just crash a minute in, so I didn't even consider that as a possibility until I tested it and recorded this footage where there was nary a drop. So who fucking knows, but it was laggy when I was playing the game with my buddies. Maybe one of them was siphoning off my bandwidth. So I had one more option to consider. It had been pointed out to me that these games also work with mobile devices. So, yeah, sure, why not? Let's give it another shot. Well, to my surprise, it worked. I didn't need to scrunch my face inwards in order to see anything, but here I am, playing Highguard. I did it! I'm satisfied. Oh yeah, and about the game, Really, the most memorable part of Highguard for me was when I got stuck in the tutorial because one of the objectives didn't load, and I was forced to traverse and jump around the big closed-off arena that they had. So, I honestly can't believe I'm saying this, but I hope Marathon pulls through.
Speaking of Marathon, Crazy Even's other prediction here, Marathon performs worse than Concord, but stays up for maybe a month longer.
So that's like maybe a 6-week prediction from the Crazy Even.
All right. Enough of that nonsense. Let's get into the real meat. I previously covered Pac-Man Uno and Do, and thought they were pretty fun little platformer types, of which there had been a variety of at the time. I was a little disappointed that 2 didn't hold up to my nostalgia, but I have since made peace with it, and I had acquired 3 a long while ago. Pretty sure I got it at Too Many Games one year, but a lot of these acquisitions have just fallen off of memory, so who knows, I probably could have found this in a dumpster. Yeah, retro game dumpster diving. Have you not tried it? Anyway, I had seen ads for it back in the day, and maybe in like Nick Kids magazines or some other kids magazine at the time, but all I really knew about it before my playthrough was that it was the worst of the trilogy. Oh, and one small other detail, but we'll get to it later. That said, looking into the history of this thing, it's a miracle that it exists at all. See, Pacman World 3 started as a separate Pac-Man thing entirely, and had the involvement of none other than Don Bluth. Yes, that Don Bluth. For as interesting as that may have turned out, if we're going by, iNinja, this project was eventually scrapped and reworked as a new Pacman World entry by an old friend of the channel, Blitz Games. This new version was close to meeting the same fate thanks to Namco's then ongoing merger with Bandai, but the team at Blitz managed to convince the new head honchos to keep the project going, under the caveat that it be released at the end of 2005, and without any further funding. Unsurprisingly, this debacle brought on quite a few changes compared to the previous games. You still do play as Pac-Man going around the levels, collecting the Pac Dots, eating the fruit, voring the ghosts. But this new entry is set in a totally new world where Pac-Land and the Ghost's home, the Spectral Realm as it's called, have merged into a form that's so unstable that the ghosts are now helping Pac-Man defeat the fellow responsible for it before their antics destroy both realms. Whose name, and I have to point this out, is Irwin. Great. Pac-Man has also gained the ability to throw hands and feet down onto his foes, and that ghost hunting is a central required part of gameplay, just like the days of old. Except you're chomping on these spectral ghosts here, and not the other ones. Don't forget, you're teaming up with them. Oh, and the villain from the first game too. How could I forget? Now these changes don't seem that bad on the surface. Certainly weird, but I can work with weird, and yet in their rush to complete it, it would appear that Blitz forgot the most important element to making the first 2 games work. For all the problems I had laid out for those entries, the level design was tight and efficiently designed, also known as the good shit. 3, on the other hand, is content to stretch out its 15 levels to 2 or even 3 times the length, so no matter how many puzzles or combat sections or collectibles or areas where you control the ghosts who have their own powers, go figure, that they throw at you, it ends up becoming very dull very quickly. Thankfully, lives are about as bountiful as the Pac Dots in this universe, so there's not even any challenge to getting through it. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. There are 1 or 2 timed sections that I found very annoying. Oh, and what Pacman World game would be complete without shitty bosses and a shitty camera? The sole aspect that kept me going, and what's often most commonly brought up whenever Pacman World 3 enters the platformer discussion, is how Pac-Man be spittin' state secrets. Or, should I say, is just talking in general. Yes, if World 3 didn't already reek of generic mid-2000s mascot platformer, Pac-Man speaking in full sentences as a sarcastic dickhead fully gives it away. And, well, it's not like the story's any good or the dialogue is particularly memorable, but it is weird enough coming out of Pac-Man's mouth that I found it strangely compelling, or at the very least kept me engaged and just see what else was going to come out of his mouth. It's no wonder they brought the guy back for Pacman World 2 Remake, so hopefully they bring him back again if they ever get around to 3. And that's a very, very big if. It's not like the repack treatment would make the overall game really any better. It's just kind of a lame conclusion to the trilogy. But, you know, weirder things have happened, so I guess we'll see. Maybe they'll remake the New Adventures instead.
それは神か悪魔かシン女神転生2
And let's throw another sequel onto the pile with another entry into the Mega 10 playthrough saga. As I previously stated, I found Shin Megami Tensei to be where the series really came into form, congealing the many ideas and mechanics from the Famicom games into one complete, compelling whole. So I was curious to see what the sequel would bring to the fusion table, with much of the same team in tow, and a new director who'd be at the helm of the series for the next few games. In Shin 2, you play as an amnesiac demon-fighting warrior named Hawk, living in the squalid, cyberpunkian post-disaster world that resulted from the events of the first Shin game, as he and his coach try to escape that life by gaining access into the revered city known as the Center. The story gets a lot more complicated beyond that, and as is now the Shin Megami Tensei way, the Light and Chaos factions return, alongside choices that'll influence which factions you'll end up being friends with. In fact, the religious themes are the most prominent that they have ever been in the series up to this point. Not that this is a bad thing. In fact, I think the overall story is also the strongest it has been in the series up to this point. Like, the world building here is incredible, and the cast of characters are really neat, and there's a twist towards the end that it genuinely caught me off guard. Like, my god, I started feeling something for these fools. But as far as gameplay goes, it's not much new here. It's just the same rigmarole it's been since Digital Devil Story 2. Recruit demons, fight demons, fuse demons, kiss demons. Of course, they have polished it up a little bit and improved the pacing and, best of all, balanced the difficulty a hell of a lot better than before. Well, at least until the last few bosses, where the battles went on for so long, because I didn't have the best equipped team to handle them, that the emulator I was using, sorry, the Super Famicom console that I was recording from, froze up and ruined any progress I made on that boss. I think it took me like 5 tries for me to get it through. A lot of luck required as well, but that is also the Shin Megami Tensei way now. And while we're now on the negative train, let's stop here at Structure Station, because for as ambitious and sprawling that this story and world is, it's kind of a mess to navigate through, even with the shortcuts that they throw in here and there. Oh yeah, and the music isn't as good either. I really wish I had more to say here, but a lot of the game's strengths are in that story, and I do not want to divulge any more of it than I already have. If you're going to play for any reason other than going through all of the games like I have, and hopefully you'll not take as long as I have either, it's for that. And if you also disagree with that, well, we can just duke it out in a game of Russian roulette. Digital Russian roulette, as in this game has a version of Russian roulette with the demons. Not actual Russian roulette, because that would probably get my channel completely. Good morning, Jack. I made pancakes. Yep. Just bringing another sequel, bartender. Hey, don't fucking cut me off. I need to review this shit-ass game. You fucking cut me off, I'm gonna get my Dexter Plash and fuck. Sorry about that. Where were we? Oh yeah, talking about Jak 3. Man, these games have been interesting. First one is a nice, good old 3D collectathon platformer with a nice interconnected world, and the second one threw most of that away in favor of a weird-ass, edgy-ass shooter platformer with a less than nice open world, and not just quality-wise. I don't dislike it as much as other people in my circle do, but well, it wasn't the smoothest transition, I will say that. And here we have the continuing adventures of Jak and Dak in Jak 3, and I really didn't know what to expect with this one. They're going to continue the direction that 2 went in. Well, just give me more refined gameplay mechanics and a more forgiving difficulty curve, and it can have all the edgy bullshit that it wants. And to my surprise, that's exactly what I ended up getting. With that said, let's just get through the negatives out of the way first. So Jak 3 is a bit less edgy than 2, which is pretty funny because it starts with Jak and Daxter getting exiled into the desert because of political shenanigans, but I just kind of stopped really caring about the story once I clocked the twist about partway in, and it didn't really throw any more surprises beyond that. There are still some pretty funny moments. There do remain humor in this humorous kind of platformer, in this humorous platformer era. I mean, Jesus, man. If you told me that they were just completely making up this story as they went along, I would believe you. As far as gameplay goes, if you didn't care for Jak 2 at all, I don't know how well do you take to this one. The structure is pretty similar, as are the mechanics. They have expanded the open world concept a little bit, which means that they also expanded on the iffy driving mechanics. Thankfully, you're not stuck with just the hoverboard or any of the hover ships, as you now have access to a litany of dune buggies that you can use to traverse around a big desert area. And a lot of them are bouncy. Maybe a little too bouncy, but they do the job, and they control much better than those other two. And while we're on the topic of those refinements, the gunplay also received a big boost, as all of the previous weapons make their grand return, and each of them now have 2 upgraded modes, allowing, say, the wimpy shotgun blast to fire shockwaves or grenades, or the overpowered minigun to fire big-ass lasers. Honestly, the gunplay carried a lot of the game for me. Like, forgive the obvious comparison, but it reminded me of what Insomniac did with Ratchet & Clank Going Commando, and there wasn't a level-up system here I had to worry about, so I could just focus on mindlessly shooting these enemies, and it was a lot of fun. Even better, there's a larger presence of what originally made Jak Dax click for me, i.e. platforming and puzzling. And they've added a bunch of special eco powers to use for that alongside the dark ones that are used for combat, and well, I don't think it's that surprising that this is where Amy Hennig enters the Naughty Dog picture, as this felt like a sort of through line into the Uncharted series. Not in structure, perhaps, and yes, there are a bunch of vehicle-based missions to balance that stuff out before you go back to Haven City to engage in some random skirmishes, and Daxman. You think it's a coincidence they came out in the same year? But it's got a similar adventurous spirit to it, like the first game had, and the second game significantly cut down on. In fact, as I was writing this part, I realized that this trilogy is kind of analogous to the original Indiana Jones trilogy. No, think about it. The first one is kind of lighthearted. It introduces the world and sets the tone for the franchise. The second one is far darker and is a little more contained. And the third one combines and refines the various elements from the first two, while introducing a hitherto unknown father figure. Okay, this is going to require a lot of workshopping, but I think there's something there. But overall, I'm surprised I'm saying this, but I think Jak 3 is a pretty good game, and a pretty good conclusion to the trilogy. And I can't wait to get into Jak X, where the two will trap themselves in a fridge to withstand a nuclear explosion, and then the final game will have them participating in the Siege of Syracuse. Why not? One of these days, I am going to do a big Steam backlog episode so I can lessen my Steam backlog guilt, which is a real medical condition. My doctor says so. But until then, I'm just gonna keep chipping away at it and play games that I had a passing interest in a while back for one reason or another. Such is the case with Ghost of a Tale. Yes, that indie mouth stealth game. Any of y'all remember this one? True, 8 years is a long time, but there was some hype for it, enough for Yahtzee to have covered at the time, even giving it a thumbs up. And you know, a thumbs up from him is practically a Game of the Year recommendation, even these days. And that video was all I really knew about it, so into the wishlist it went, and I snagged it on a Steam sale a couple years ago. Not sure when it's right for me to check it out now. Guess I just wanted something really quick and easy to get through. But, folks, there's a lot more to this sneaky mouse than meets the rat's eye. See, Ghost of a Tale comes to us from Lionel Seath Galette, a French fellow who has a respectable background in animation and has worked with DreamWorks and Paramount on a number of varyingly respectable animation films. But the guy's always had a fascination for video games, and so at some point in the early 2010s, he took a step back from his animation work and went on a one-man journey in creating this thing, drawing inspiration from other games and other animated films, getting some extra help along the way, as well as a successful Indiegogo campaign which eventually bore its fruit and saw release in early 2016 in early access, with a full release coming a few years later. And based on how it had been described to me, I was expecting it to be like a bit of a janky stealth action game in the vein of a mid-2000s licensed title. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Ghost of a Tale takes place in a medieval world of mice and rats and frogs and other creatures, presumably, and you play as one of them mices, a bard named Tilo. Tilo's been imprisoned on a rat-controlled island fortress and separated from his mouse wife, and the game chronicles his journey to escape from his shackles and reunite with his beloved. Stealth is his primary method of doing so, and the mechanics aren't very complicated. You just sneak around the rats without them noticing you for too long, and scurry away to one of the many hiding places if they do. You can also find various costume parts to disguise Tilo as, say, a mini rat guard, or a thief, or a king, to trick those stupid rats, which allows Tilo to rummage around this interconnected fortress as he pleases, while doing various fetch quests. Actually, that's what most of the gameplay amounts to. There are a bunch of keys spread around the fortress that can open certain doors and make maneuvering around it a little bit easier, and there is some action here and there, as well as an upgrade system to improve Tilo's stealth skills and moveset. Oh, and lest I forget, the innovative candlestick system, where you light it in dark places and it allows you to see in those places, like, amazing technology that these anthropomorphic creatures have. But the quests all just kind of boil down to get a thing or a bunch of things and then bring them back to the person who told you to get that thing or a bunch of things, or to the person that they told you to bring that thing to or those things to. Make sense? It gets tiring after a bit, especially when the stealth gets thrown to the wayside when you've unlocked enough costumes to just kind of move around without the rats giving a shit at all. With that said, this game's absolutely worth your time. Simple as its mechanics may be, Ghosts of a Tale's presentation is stellar. Galat is one talented artist. My God, this is such a pretty looking game, and I love these character designs, especially the hand-drawn character portraits that, when they get a little more expressive, lets their personality shine through. I also love the little musical motifs and themes that pop up throughout the game. Like, when your main character is a bard, they better break out some damn good tunes, and they did not disappoint. Technical performance is another matter. I know the team had patched the shit out of it for a good year, but I did have to reload a save once or twice after Tilo got stuck. But I will have to agree with what Yahtzee said in that the game's strongest element is its writing. Which is funny because initially I did not care about the story one bit. Like, I was skipping through those unvoiced text boxes until the rats came home. I did not care. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was bland. I thought it was shit. Go back to writing school or stick to your day job. Okay, no, I wouldn't go that far, but I wasn't super engaged at first. Until I realized, the further that the game went in, that they were doing some really interesting stuff with its story. There's a lot more to these characters than I had assumed, and I got very absorbed in the ongoings of these rats and mice. Like, don't let the seemingly cozy nature confuse you. This is not a cozy game. But like I said, it is absolutely worth your time. I'm very happy that I finally went through it. And I'll be even happier when the sequel finally comes out in 20 years or so. But no rush, fellas. The industry's in the toilet right now. Y'all can take your time. Okay, this is going to be a little bit tricky. So I went through Hazelight Studios' 30 million plus selling divorce platformer It Takes Two last year, not knowing or completely forgetting that their follow-up game would be released a couple months later. There are a number of reasons as to why it took me so long to get to, and those reasons are the same reasons that it takes me so long to get to anything these days. But my partner not just co-op partner, my actual partner, and I really enjoyed our time with It Takes Two, so getting to this was a no-brainer. And the central conceit is a bit more big-brained than the smaller, more dramatic angle of It Takes Two, as it revolves around two aspiring yet struggling writers named Mio and Zoe being invited to a big publishing event at some big publishing corporation that turns out to be some experimental shindig where they've been implanted into some futuristic pods to live in the worlds of their creative ideals. Naturally, the big corporation has other ideas, and the two girls end up trapped in the same pod and being forced to traverse through a series of worlds based around the stories and concepts that have been circling in their minds all their lives. And I mean all their lives. As well as dealing with conflicts between each other's ideas and personalities. The resulting gameplay does take after It Takes Two in many respects, with all the puzzling and platforming, and each world introducing a new mechanic for our respective characters or players to fiddle around with. There does seem to be more of a focus on action and combat this time, but it's pretty much the same stuff, and I'll be honest, I was a little down on this thing at first. I didn't find the premise to be nearly as interesting as two divorcees being shrunken down to playthings and jumping and puzzling through a miniaturized and fantastical version of their home, and it didn't help that the writing and dialogue were still kind of crappy, which yeah, I know it's a Hazelight staple at this point, but come on. However, the further that we got, the more I warmed up to it. Partly because my partner is a much bigger fantasy buff than I am, so once we got to the part with the dragons, if I wasn't having a good time by then, well, they would just feed me to their dragon pet. But there had been just too many awesome set pieces and sequences for my dumb cynical ass to turn my head away from. These guys really know how to make a fun cinematic platformer, and one that's so expertly paced. So a session would start with us jumping around a dystopian sci-fi city and blasting away enemy robots with epic laser guns, and then end with us traversing a mysterious woodland using our plant-like or aquatic abilities to overcome the numerous puzzles and challenges in our way. I can say for sure that the side content is much more fulfilling, rather than the fun but fluff competitive games that were in It Takes Two. These were whole universes that we discover and were based on older ideas from when these characters were kids or they just never fully developed on. And it's no wonder that this game took 4 years to make and that there's so much cut ideas or unused ideas in the game. As for the story, well, the dialogue didn't get much better, so when I just stopped giving a shit, I found it to be much more tolerant. Besides, the main characters are named after his daughters, and if I'm insulting them, I'm insulting his daughters by proxy, so I don't want to be that big a dumb cynical asshole. And to be serious, there is a profound sincerity to Fares' writing that I did learn to appreciate, just like I did with It Takes Two. So if you play that game, or if you're into these big blockbuster type cinematic platformers and haven't given Split Fiction a go, easy recommend. I keep wanting to say Split Second here because it's another game that we had covered in a prior episode, and it just sounded so similar to me, and I may have actually said it already in there, and so, I'm just not gonna give a shit. And to be fair, they are kind of similar in terms of big cinematic presentation, but well. And that will do it. We may only be 11 episodes in this series that's been going on for almost 5 years now, but if anything, I consider them to be fun writing exercises, and I like critiquing stuff that I couldn't just write down in a Blue Sky post. Even if said critiques aren't as elaborate or complicated as stuff that you'd find on Controversy or the Lengthen Gaming videos. I do have some games pinned down for the next episode, a bit of writing about them done as well, but you know what, again, let's not make the same mistakes that we had previously. But whatever those games end up being, I hope you'll keep up with these crazy thoughts. So thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you later.
The enemy dropped the shield breaker. Move in. This is our shot. Spawns are locking soon. Only a few seconds before overtime. Fire! our base. They've got the shield breaker.